Hello, I'm Andrew Cotter. Welcome to the Life on Tour podcast presented by Hilton, bringing you interviews with key figures from the world of golf. Now, golf is dominated, of course, by the players, by those who hit the shots, win the titles, but there are those who are with them every step of the way, advising, motivating, consoling, celebrating together at all the key moments. They are, of course, the caddies. And for this edition of Life on Tour, I'm joined by two of the very best. John McLaren, currently motivating, consoling, celebrating in the company of Paul Casey, and also Billy Foster, long-time accomplice of Lee Westwood, but with a list of players before that stretching back through a who's who of the game, and perhaps most notably Seve. Gentlemen, good morning. I'm sure.
Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Billy. Good morning, Tom. I'm sure we'll mention all of the players who you've caddied for, but I mean, I want to find out how it started for you both, because for you from Keighley in Yorkshire, and how you can't have imagined growing up, oh, caddying, that'll be a life for me. So where did it start for you, Billy?
I was working with my father as an apprentice joiner, 16 years old, getting £20 a week, getting sacked 3 times a week. And there was a European Tour event, came to my home club in Bingley, 1981. And we just went along, 5 or 6 juniors from the golf club. There was no caddies in them days because there was no money in the game. And we just went along and got a job for the week. My first job was Matt's Lanner. We decided to follow a few tournaments around Britain, York, Benson Hedges, there was one in Leeds at the car care, and then come to Wentworth, and a mate of mine said, let's go to Spain on a 6 weeks holiday and caddy a few tournaments down there. So we did, and I bumped into a guy called Hugh Bioki from South Africa who took a shine to me and asked me if I wanted to come back and caddy full-time in 1983. So apprentice joiner, getting sacked 3 times a week for 20 quid or having a bash on the tour, and I just did it to learn more about the game for myself and do a bit of travelling, because you couldn't make a living as a caddy back then, but it was really enjoyable times.
Yeah, I mean, that's going back some time. John, when did you start as a professional caddy? Did you go straight into the deep end?
No, 92. My route in was slightly different. I was playing golf, and I ended up playing in South Africa on the Sunshine Tour, and befriended or became friends with Roger Vessels, and he'd managed, it was the first year I believe that they did the co-sanction event at the Wanderers, and Roger finished 2nd or 3rd, so it actually qualified him for his European card. And when the Sunshine Tour finished, he just said to me, would I like to come and caddy for him during the summer over here, with it being opposite seasons. I was reluctant. I wasn't quite sure whether it was for me. I thought I was going to go to Canada and go and play on the Canadian Tour, and then said, okay, I'll give it a go. And I came over and did a summer with him, and I enjoyed it, went back to playing, and then eventually went back to Roger and said, I'm going to caddy full time if that's all right.
I mean, a lot of the caddies have been good players themselves, perhaps players who realise that they're not going to make it as a professional and decide to want to stay in golf as well, so take the caddying route.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's an asset to have been a good player. I mean, I think you can see shots through a player's eyes, but I mean, I know you don't have to be. That's the thing.
Well, I mean, when we go back to the start of your caddying career, Billy, we are sitting here in this glorious, this is the Players' Lounge here at Wentworth. I mean, when you started, things were very different for the players, let alone the caddies, but it was hard for the caddies because you were treated as not even second-class citizens below that.
It was pretty brutal. You know, you weren't allowed in the clubhouses. There was no yardage books, there was no range balls, no mobile phones, no internet. You couldn't afford to get on an aeroplane, and you stayed in the most horrendous hovels. £2 a night pensions in the back streets of Barcelona and Madrid, and rats had come squealing in the middle of the night, squeal and said, this ain't for us lads, and leave. I've slept in bushes, and you slept on trains from tournament to tournament, slept on buses, and that's the way it was, and you'd hunt in packs. You'd be 20 or 30 guys on a train going to the next tournament, and literally you'd leave 10 guys looking after the suitcases at the train station, and you'd all 5 or 6 years wander off, walking the streets trying to find somewhere to stay. It was like Joseph knocking on the door and there's no room at the inn, and carry on until you found somewhere. It was a tough existence.
Literally the worst bit, wasn't it? Dragging your suitcase around the streets trying to find something late on a Sunday night, having travelled from one tournament to the next. And suitcases didn't seem as good as they are now. They didn't have the wheels and the stroller type things.
But I mean, and again, the money in the game as a whole wasn't what it is now. But you found your way. You mentioned Hugh Baiocchi, very good South African player, started to have a bit of success there, and then you moved on to, was it Gordon Brand Jr. after?
Gordon Brand Jr. But to give you an example, I mean, some of the lads have just been to the Players' Championship. I caddied for Tony Johnson in Portugal in 1983, and
He's quite a lively character, Tony.
brilliant, absolutely hilarious.
Bit of a temper on him, is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, but a hilarious character.
Can you think of any moments in particular where he was difficult or lively to deal with?
There's a wonderful story where he played with Seve in Holland. It was a 6-hole at Kemena Golf Club. And it's a blind tee shot over the top of the hill. And the second shot, it's a dog leg round the corner, but there's a tree right on the corner. And Seve and Tony have teed off. Tony gets to the first ball, stops, and the tree's right in line with the green for his second shot. So he's scratching his head, can't get over it, can't go under it because the rough's too long. And he's struggling to shape it, slice it or hook it round it. So he sees a sprinkler about 4 foot away, and he nearly does the splits and just gets his left toe on it, and he says to Seve, "Seve, you see this sprinkler? Is there any chance I can get a drop from it?" Because Seve was renowned for pushing the boundaries of the
Rabbit
referees.
scrapes.
Yeah, I mean, he'd bully the referees into drops and that. He was well known for it. So Tony's waved Seve across, "Have a look at this, can I get a drop?" Tony's thinking, if I can get a club length relief from the sprinkler, I'll just be able to get round this tree, you see. So Seve comes across and he starts laughing and says, Tony, I ain't so sorry, eh?" Because Seve's ball's 20 yards further, clear shot to the green. "Tony, I am so sorry, my friend, you know that's not your natural stance. I'm really sorry, Tony, you cannot have a drop, eh?" He said, "Good, Seve, that's your ball, mine's over there." Yeah, so I stitched him right up.
Yeah, I mean, you carried for Tony Johnson
I
as
did.
well, John. You
Yeah.
enjoy that experience?
It's probably one of the best years of my life in many ways. Tony's a colourful character, and as you said earlier, highly volatile. I do remember caddying for him in Portugal. Tony had a bit of a habit of grabbing the back of his golf glove and tearing it off, and then demanding his other one. So I do recall one time at, I think it was Penina Golf Club, par 5, it was over a lake, and Tony had hit his drive right down the middle, and I was sort of eyeballing how far it was, and Tony, as you recall, is an unbelievably aggressive player. If he can go for it, he will. So I was looking at the yardage and I thought, well, it's on the very edge of his 3-wood. So I thought, well, what's the best thing to do here? I give him his yardage and I quickly grabbed a glove out of the bag, slipped it in my pocket in case we had a disaster. And then while I was in there, I saw another one, thought, yeah, we could do with backup. So I put another one in my other pocket, and Tony, as on demand, grabbed his 3-wood. He whacked it straight at the pin. It looked beautiful, and it just cleared the lake and then slowly trickled back into the lake. And as he'd walked about 3 yards forward, and he grabbed hold of the back of his glove and he's like, "You mother tore it off."
Muddy
and
funster.
Yeah, and I quickly grabbed the other one and handed it to him, and he turned in complete disbelief, put his glove on his hand, stood there, looked at me straight in the eyes and just tore off the next one. And I grabbed the next one out of my pocket, handed it to him, and he then was on his knees laughing. He goes, "How the f*** did you know that was?" I said, "Tony, it's one of those things. This is you written on a piece of paper."
Yeah, it's a beautiful language, Afrikaans.
Yeah.
So when you first started, what were you on a sort of Gordon Brand? In fact, I know the figures because he's sent them to us. So
Well, the first few jobs I caddied, you used to get £50 for caddying, and then you got 5%. And I finished 7th with Tony Johnson in the Portuguese Open, and he won £900. So I got 45 quid. Well, the caddy pays his own expenses, so I mean, get to Portugal, pay for your hotel, your food, and do all your work.
an expensive bush to
Finish
stay
top
in.
10 and get 45 quid for your efforts.
Yeah.
You know, that goes to show there weren't many caddies.
But the upsides of it are kind of a young man seeing the world, and then you get to, with Gordon Brand Jr., you get to go to an amazing Ryder Cup in '87 in Muirfield Village. So, tremendous experiences.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Obviously, Gordon was, he finished 4th on the money list that year, so he went from actually, not seeing a future, making a living at the game, to thinking, hang on a minute, I made a few £1,000 there. I could almost make a living at this, but then you get involved in bigger tournaments, and like I said, the Ryder Cup at Muirfield Village was a fantastic experience, and it just whet the appetite to go and do bigger and better things in the game.
We're aging you here, but while John was still trying to make it on the Sunshine Tour as a player, you got the call. I mean, because you were thinking about, after Gordon Brandree, stepping away from caddying, and then the call came from Seve.
I'd caddied for 8 years. I'd pretty much done all of Europe, and my game had improved even though I wasn't playing. And I travelled what I wanted to travel, and I got offered a job as an assistant professional at Ilkley Golf Club in West Yorkshire, which is a really nice golf course.
Can I just interject to say that Gordon Brand, again, in his contact with us, he told you how much he paid you, but he also said that he caddied for you once in Australia and that it was just appalling. Is that your recollection of it as well?
Yeah, but he's also forgotten that at the Belfry, I'll never forget it, and you can ask him, you can email him back when he shot 43 on the back nine. And I'd caddied 18 holes and I had to go out and play in the caddy tournament final and shot 35. So he can get
and beat for the edit. Excellent. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. So right, we will be in contact with Gordon and we'll hit right back. So yes. But anyway, so you were thinking about.
I got offered a job as an assistant pro, and I accepted the job. And 4 weeks before I started the job, Seve Ballesteros asked me to work for him. So.
Would you, for anyone else, would you? I mean, you can't turn that one down.
Well, you can't, because anybody at my age, Seve Ballesteros was your boyhood hero, and to have the opportunity as a 10 handicapper, well, not a 10 handicapper, but a very average player, growing up admiring Seve Ballesteros as not only a golfing superstar, but a global superstar of sport. To have the opportunity to work for your boyhood hero you had to do it.
Yeah, I mean, John, we'll come on to it, but we're going down a Seve route here, which we have to explore with Billy, because I think caddies, a lot of players can be difficult, can be magical players at times, but Seve would have been, I would imagine, all the highs and lows, and the highest of highs, and sometimes the lowest of lows caddying for him as well.
Very much so, because when I started caddying for him, his game had gone into decline a bit, and it was a proper Ronan Keating, life's a roller coaster. He played brilliant for 3 months, and then he'd play like me for 12 months. It was incredible. He would miss 10 or 12 cuts, and then he'd come back. He played 4 tournaments in a row. He won the Chinuchi Crowns in Japan. He got beaten in a playoff in Spain. He won here at Wentworth, and he won the British Masters at Woburn in 4 weeks. So he went tied first in 4 weeks. And that's the way it was. He played brilliant for short spells, and then he played absolute dirt for 6 months.
And how was he as a person? Because again, he was, I suppose, quite a volatile character.
He was a Spaniard, didn't he? He was Latino, feisty characters out there, and stubborn, never wrong. The player is always right, Billy. You're a son of my you have to listen. I'm always right. There's been no arguing on the golf course, eh? So you had to take a few on the chin, but the Yorkshire Terrier in me came out, and I fought fire with fire. And if you lasted 5 minutes with Seve, you did all right. So 5 years was a good effort, but eventually the Terrier bit too hard, and I got sacked for speaking my mind too much.
I mean, that seems to be a sort of occupational hazard of being a caddy, is that you're never too far. It's like being a football manager in the relegation zone. You're never too far away from...
Without the payoff.
Without the payoff, without the big Sam Allardyce payoff. But you're never too far away from the chop. It's quite a fragile existence at times as well. I mean, you two have been very successful, but everybody out there knows that, the end might not be too far away.
Carry on, John.
I don't know whether to say this or not. I'm yet to be sacked.
You have sacked. Well, interestingly, because we'll come on to your relationship with Luke Donald and other players as well. But you actually ended your relationship with Luke Donald. I mean, that was quite a strong decision to make.
Yeah, not an easy decision, but I felt at the time it was the right one for both of us. I felt that I'd perhaps taken him as far as I could with my skills, and his game wasn't quite what it was, and he seemed like he needed something fresh, and I wasn't sure that I was bringing it anymore. It kind of, I asked my wife basically if I'd turned somewhat grey in the last sort of 6 to 8 months, and she was like, "How do you mean?" And I said, "When you look at me, am I brightly coloured or am I grey?" And she's like, "You're a bit grey, sorry." And I'm like, "Okay, right, work's taken its toll," and I realised that I needed to change for me as much as anything, and I mean, I feel bad about it because loyalty's, you know, a wonderful quality, but I knew it was time to move, and I guess I hoped it would help Luke reignite some of his career.
Well, I mean, tell us about the difficult, because you touched upon it there, about the stresses of being a caddy, because people, a lot of people who don't know caddying will see the old view of caddies. Oh, you turn up, you carry the bag, and that's it. But it's so much more than that in terms of you're sort of living the stress, but it's a powerless existence, because you just watch them hit the shots, but you have the stresses that they have as well. And it must be, I'd say, quite a nerve-wracking job at so many times.
Yeah, I think that's how you end up valuing your own self, though. I mean, I view my job as being one that I'm trying to eke out every percentage of improving a player. So that's how I go into the job. I mean, not everyone does, but to me, I think if I'm going to try and make Paul Casey the best player he can be, that's going to come at a cost, and going to have to think about everything rather than just turning up. So, you know, I just view that as the job.
Yeah. Well, Billy, we've made the comparison between a caddy and a football manager, and a good football manager will recognise that some players need a pat on the back, an arm around the shoulder, and some need a rocket. So of all list some of the players you've caddied for. So Hugh Barkey, Gordon Brown Jr., Seve, of course, Darren, Thomas Bjorn, Garcia, Tiger, briefly.
Some psychos in that list.
Well, exactly, that's what I was about to say.
John's on about being there. Look at me, I'm a badger.
I mean, there are some, let's just say, strong characters in there. I mean, my goodness, there's some temperaments. So how do you deal with the different personalities in there?
You learn to adapt with each player. Each player is completely different. Some players like it to say certain things, other players detest it. But you find out very quickly, within a day or two of starting to caddy for a bloke, and you have to adapt accordingly. You know, Lee Westwood out there's pretty tranquilo. You know, he's you have a laugh and a joke, and you know he's on the same wavelength, same sense of humour. And every day going to work's quite easy. You get other blokes, you know, the way the spike's on the inside, you know, the angry men, like, you know, and they're looking to blame, you know, if it's left or right, it's the caddy's fault. You know, if it's long or short, it's if it's long or short, it's the caddy's fault. If it's left or right, it's the coach's fault. And if it ain't their fault, it's the wife's fault. It's never theirs.
So you're saying angry men, and I'm looking at the list, and it doesn't really narrow it down on the list here. Well, let's go to another one you carry for, Thomas Bjorn, because you kind of forget who you've carried for, but that would be 2003 at St George's when
I've just got over that. I just forgot about that one.
Well, that's
He's in
the
there,
thing,
Thomas,
because
look at him.
he still wakes up in the night about it. But again, Thomas Bjorn, the bunker on the 16th, the par 3, leading the Open Championship, and at that stage there, you say you've only just got over it. I mean, it's so difficult to take. But was there anything you couldn't say anything to a player after that's happened, could you?
I actually said at the Irish Open the week after, he said, "Have you seen the draw for the first round?" I says, "Yes, you're playing with Jean van der Velde and Doug Sanders." Listen, there's a lot of I've been out that morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, walking the golf course and looking at the flags, and I got to that 16th hole, which was pretty much the easiest hole on the golf course that day. I mean, you're 5 foot to the right of the pin, and it was disaster. Or you'd half a Kent to the left. You know, and I'd looked at that bunker, there seemed to be a foot more sand in that bunker, and, you know, it was a false front. You had to get it 15 foot to the top of the hill. It was just a horrible place to be. And then when we got to the tee, I just said, Thomas here at the TV tower, middle of the green, nowhere else, which was like 30 feet left. And, you know, you don't mean to hit straight at the flag, but it set off straight at the flag, and I was screaming no as it was going off the end of the tee. I knew where it was going, and, you know, and the second one come back and finished 6 inches deep in his footprint. I wanted to be sick in the middle of the green, because the Lurpak butter, the Danish Lurpak butter in his hands, he dropped the claret jug right there in the 16th green. It broke me heart. And I thought about it every day for 6 months.
Really? I mean, would that be the lowest moment in your career?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
What about highs? Let's lift the tone. What about highs? I mean, the greatest moment, as I say, because you do live the moments with the players, so what would be the greatest moment for you and your
Listen, there's been many great moments, you know, winning this championship with Seve Ballesteros, and, you know, Darren Clark beating Tiger Woods when he was the top of his powers. Lee Westwood winning the race to Dubai and the Dubai World Golf Championship on the same day, etc. But the Ryder Cups have been my most special moments, and with Darren Clark at the K Club in 2006, with all that had gone on with Heather passing away, and him, you know, stood there on the 16th green hugging him in tears, having won the Ryder Cup, was no money in it, but that'd be the one memory that I cherish more than anything, I'd say.
Do you become, I suppose it varies from player to player, but do you become friends with a player, or is there always a sort of employer, employee, or just work colleague delineation between the two, or do you become friends with the players?
No, my own personal, I become friends with the players, yeah, absolutely. And you know, at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, you want to put that flagstick in and go your own way. At night time, you don't want to be having dinner with them every night, but you do have dinner with them now and again. But yeah, you are mates out there. You're a partnership out there, and you want the best for each other. So yeah, you have to be mates.
John, are you again the variety of caddies? Some players want someone that they just feel comfortable with. Others want someone who's strong enough to step in on occasion. Have you? I don't know, you can name a particular shot, but have there been occasions where you've said no, that's not the right shot? You've got to be pretty strong as a caddy to in your own mind and make the decision at the right time.
Yeah, I think so. I think strong character goes a long way out here. I mean, obviously it can, as Billy say, it can certainly hurt you too, because you can overstep the mark, apparently according to them, whether you realise it or not.
Do you have to let a lot of stuff wash over you as well with what the players say?
I think you have to. I mean, Billy touched on it. I mean, the biggest quality I think that a caddy can have out here is how quickly they adapt. So it's not the fact that they do adapt, it's how quickly you do it. And as Billy said, you know, every player's slightly different, and you have a new relationship with them that another caddy didn't have. You know, it's all brand new, and you've got to quickly figure out what are the keys to help and what are the ones that you definitely avoid. You know, I certainly know Paul has a decent history of being a caddy disliker, shall we say.
There's Paul Casey, your current employer.
They can add me to that list.
Yeah, exactly. He should be added to the difficult player list here. So
at times he's...
Well, no, exactly. You don't
John's tamed him. He's tamed him. He's found the key to the cage, haven't you, John?
Exactly. Listen, you're
risking...
We have a relationship that's working.
You're threatening your "I've never been sacked" standing here. Don't worry, you'll sack him as you have a history of doing. But that's it's interesting though, because golfers are. It's a sort of individual sport. It's you've got to be. Have got to be sort of quite egocentric as well. So you've got to work around their fragilities.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's like being a father. You know, in many ways, you pick out the time when to him and the time to give him a hug, and that's often how it works. And more often than not, the hug comes straight after if you're doing a good job, because it's like, right, I've got my point across. It seems to have gone in. Now let's sit there and say, right, we can move forward with this. Come on, you're the best.
You buy him a pizza and take him off to Legoland.
Exactly,
Windsor.
yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, we are dealing with young children, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you going back before Luke and before Paul, obviously, you were Duffy Waldorf, so interesting. Colourful. Well, you're known for your colourful. I wonder, when did the sock thing start? Because you're known as Johnny Long Socks. Because you always have you're wearing some, for those just listening today, you can see some dark blue, light blue stripes and matching shoes. So when did this kick in?
Actually, I got my legs burnt in a fire when I was younger, and for the whole summer I wasn't allowed to have my legs exposed to the sun.
I thought it was going to be a funnier story than this.
No, this is truth, and I was playing tennis all through the summer, so I wore long socks.
Oh,
and then when I went to the States, everyone wore short socks, so everyone said, oh no, you've got to start wearing short socks. And I'm like, In fact, that means I'll wear longer ones and pull them up higher.
You're a rebel.
I just didn't want to conform. Yeah.
A rebel against the system. Billy, tell us about Tiger, because you caddied for, it was briefly when, was it when Steve Williams on sabbatical? Or,
Steve's wife had a baby and he was taking a couple of weeks off, so Tiger picked on me to do the President's Cup while he had the week off. So
how was that experience? I know it's the President's Cup. It's not caddying for Tiger, one of his major wins, but to be close to that man must be quite something.
Yeah, it was a great experience, and the one thing I took from it was he was an absolute gentleman, to be quite honest. Everything he said, and I try and instill it in my children that you don't get anything without saying please and thank you, and he said please and thank you to every time he spoke, which impressed me. The one thing I would say, it's the only guy in the 30 odd years I've caddied that I felt that aura about that bloke, and the only other guy I've ever is Seve Ballesteros. And I almost feel as though when Seve lost his game in 95, who came along in 96, and it was like, to me, the baton was passed over to Tiger was from Seve Ballesteros, and I genuinely felt sorry for Tiger, you know, when you're walking through the thousands of people, 10 deep, and they're screaming and screaming and screaming, and his ears are ringing, you know, and I got to the tranquility of the first tee, and he came up and there was just me and him. I said, you know, that's the first time I felt that experience for being with somebody since Seve, you know, and I genuinely know what you go through, because you might be the best player that ever lives, you might have any woman in the world, and you might be a billionaire, but I won't swap your lives.
Really?
And he sort of like looked straight through me and more or less thanked me for it. Finally somebody understood what his life's all about.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
It's interesting, the comparison you made between Tiger and Seve. And as you say, you were with Seve where he still had some highs, but he was sort of on the downward slope, which must have been very difficult because he had back problems and all sorts of ailments. When you see a great player struggling to do what he once did, how does a caddy cope with that? Yeah,
well, Seve went away from being the most naturally gifted golfer maybe ever to a guy that had more coaches than Wallace Arnold. You know, he had he asked a different person going down the range every 5 minutes on how to swing a golf club, and he just got far too technical. And you know, you get him in the middle of the trees and he'd pull off a wonderful shot because he just had this imagination to see the shot. And when he was in the middle of the fairway, he went to all technical and thinking about his positions of his swing, and you can't play golf like that. You can't play golf thinking about swing thoughts. You've got to do your work before you start playing the tournament. You can't be thinking too technical on the golf course.
It's interesting because you see players as we don't see them. You see them, you're with them most of the day, but you see their weaknesses and more their human side, and whereas we sometimes see them as superhuman players and they can do no wrong. But you must see them when they're quite vulnerable as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they're all skin and bones and blood like us. You know, they're human beings. They're all normal people. Just because they can hit a golf ball better than us, don't make them think any different.
They're pretty fragile, actually.
Very fragile characters, yeah.
Very volatile, and if they feel they've lost it, that's it.
Absolutely. There's not many people can tell them the honest truth, looking them in the eyes, and I like to think the caddies are one of the few people that really do tell them the truth, and that's why they get sacked a lot.
Yeah, but also that's why caddies have to be quasi psychologists. That's almost part of your is to know, as you say, know when to cut through the nonsense and give them as you say, but also know when to try and build them up. And the last thing you say before they hit a shot has to be a sort of positive. It's all positivity.
Yeah, and you can feel their mood. You know, if you're doing a good job, you can sense where they're at and when to say, "Come on, we've got this." You know, because everyone will try to say you've got to live in the moment and you've got to each shot one at a time. I mean, we all know the reality is you can't. It's pretty much impossible to do that. You all have a good understanding. You can see leaderboards. You know where you are in tournaments. You know how they're swinging it, and you know which flags they can and can't go at. So you're feeling it all the way through. And then when you're with them, it's recognising, as Billy said, you know, he knew 16 there with Thomas Bjorn, you can't be at that pin. He knew it. He hoped it would work. His 30-foot left, mate, that's all you got to do. And probably at the time, you were pretty confident he was going to pull the shot off.
Yeah, I missed a shot all day.
So, you know, on occasion, there doesn't feel like there's much you can do. And on other occasions, you're thinking, you know, that's really sound advice, and they latch onto it, and you pull off things.
I always feel that, and I've done a bit of lower level caddying, but it's that feeling of powerlessness as they hit the shots, because you've done all you can, and it's just that moment of hoping that it's going to be right. It's just
it only really happens over water, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, is there one? Can you single out moments in the career where it has just you've been right on the edge and it's just been a great shot, or ones where it's just? I
can think of one that I did at the time. Would I do it now? Not a chance. I wouldn't have the bottle to do it now. But I was caddying for Seve at St Melian. He had a 2-shot lead playing the last, and the second shot was over water to a front left pin. And he's got a 2-shot lead. I'm thinking, well, just hit right half of the green where there was no water. 3 putts and you win the tournament. End of. But you know it's Seve Balassier, so he's going to knock the flag out. So I gave him the yardage. I can see it now, 187 metres, which is like 205 yards. Into a little bit of breeze, right on the limit for a 5-iron for him. And I knew he'd want to hit a 5-iron. He said, "Billy, how far we have?" I said, "He got 194 metres. I gave him a 7-metre mystery, longer, so he'd hit the 4-iron. So he hit the forehand, went in the car park out of bounds over the green. No, he finished 15 foot behind the hole and he won the tournament, which was, would you say great caddying or bottle? I did it anyway, but it's like, and I nudged him in the fairway and told him, I think he wanted to rip my head off, like, but he won the tournament. I got away with it, but God, I don't think I could do that now.
Did you have some cracking arguments with Seve?
Oh yeah, I mean, we went at it big time. Like, I mean, he used to bite his grips, tears running down his face. He's punched himself. He actually loosened his tooth going up the 8th fairway at Augusta one time. He snapped up to forward in the trees, and I heard this almighty slap. I thought, what's that? He punched himself so hard in the face, he loosened his tooth, like. But we used to go at it, like, arguing. Well, ultimately, that's why we finished, because I was in a straitjacket coming off the golf course on the Friday or whatever, and we went to the front of the clubhouse, and I need a word with you, and I just unleashed this 5-minute tirade of abuse, shouting and screaming at him. And once it had all come out, it had all the pressure had gone, like, you know, but I obviously overstepped the mark, because that was it.
But yeah, I mean,
it was acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously remained, you know.
No, I remained great friends with him.
You were a pallbearer, were you not, at his,
yeah,
at his funeral?
yeah.
I mean, it goes without saying, tremendously sad, the story of Seve ultimately, but I presume that your moments with him remain the highlights. Whoever you caddy for, wherever you achieve, your moments with Seve remain pretty much the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some lovely memorabilia and some lovely letters, text messages, you know, and letters that his brother sent after the funeral, just saying what he thought about me, which was really humbling and really nice to have, you know, and I'll cherish them forever.
John, what are your high points from your career so far? Because I'm sure there's a lot to go. I look at Billy and sometimes I think, well, Billy's...
I'm finished, that's what you say. Billy's finished. What about you, John?
What about you, John? You've got a long way to go. A young, vital man. What are your high points of your career so far?
I've been fortunate enough to win this tournament 3 times. That's definitely.
See, I love the way
point.
caddies say I've been fortunate enough to win it, because it is you know, you've played the part and you'll take the victory. Yeah, that was with Luke obviously.
Once with Anders Hansen and
of course,
twice
2007.
Yeah. That was.
Would he be on the difficult list as well? I think Anders would probably qualify for that.
Anders would be on the Danish list.
Okay. So all difficult.
Yeah, you can.
Thomas is an accomplice.
Yeah, you can take that as you like. Yeah, Anders, he wasn't difficult to me. He's difficult to himself. He's a self-harmer. You know, he just has to abuse himself. If he's not abusing himself, there's something wrong. That was actually my first week with him that we won here. And he was extremely complimentary of my caddying skills that week.
I seem to recall it raining, and he was wearing a jersey that by the end was sort of down almost at his knees.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah. Either that or he was slowly getting smaller, I can't quite tell. But yeah, he's actually a great lad. He's one of the really funny individuals away from golf. And you were saying earlier about staying friends. I actually had Duffy, Anders and Luke at my wedding, so I stay friends with all of the guys. And
it's like Harry and Meghan, better.
Yeah, maybe. And Anders is, away from golf, an absolutely fantastic character. But at golf, it gets to him.
Yeah. I think they're summing up golf.
But yeah, 3 wins here. That one.
Ryder Cup as well. Obviously, what are you on now, Billy? 13.
13, yeah.
And so you're going to this one as well. You'll be at this.
Well, that won't count. You don't count them unless you're
actually caddying. So
I'm going, but I won't be caddying at this stage.
So
you never know.
Well, you never know exactly. So highlights in particular from the Ryder Cup. You mentioned 2006.
Well, 87 Muirfield Village, the first time Europe managed to win in America, was excellent. Yeah, I mean, 2002, catching Tiger Woods in the toilet with no toilet paper. That was a highlight.
Well, there you go. You brought it in nicely, because your experience in a gentleman's restroom with Tiger Woods. Tell us.
Yes, it was the Ryder Cup at the Belfry. First morning, first match was Darren Clark and Thomas Bjorn playing Tiger Woods and Paul Erzinger. So I've got to the putting green, 7:45, 8 o'clock first tee time. I said to Darren, the old flock of seagulls are flapping. I said, I need to go for a Tom Kite. I'll be back in a minute. So I went to go to the toilets.
Imagine being one of the great golfers of all time, first of all, in Tom Kite, and you're now rhyming slang. So excellent.
Yeah, so I've sat down in cubicle number 1, trolleys around the ankles, just about to give it the full thrust morning glory, and I look to the side, ooh, full reverse, no toilet paper. So I've come out of the cubicle, walked straight across, trap 2, straight across the corridor, and there's Davis Love, the third caddy in there. Cubby, how you doing? So I sit down, 20 rolls of toilet paper behind me, no problem. Next minute, spikes on the bathroom floor. Morning, Cubby. Morning, Tiger. Bang. Trap 1 where I've just come from. Well, I'm crying now, because I've just got this vision in my head of Tiger Woods walking up the 5th, like John Wayne that's just got off his horse. I'm using the excess toilet paper in my cubicle to dry the tears in my eyes. I'm crying, laughing at and biting my knuckles. So anyway, I come out, and as I'm walking past his cubicle, it's now 6 minutes to tee off, and I hear this little sigh. He realises there's no toilet paper, and I thought, you know what, I can't do it too. So I walked back to my cubicle, rolled off about 20 sheets, folded them up, got down on my hands and knees and went under his toilet door, said, "Whoever's in there, you might be needing this." And as he grabbed it, I went, "You're up, what up?" and walked out. And sure enough, we beat him 1-up. And he came out with the biggest smile on his face. Obviously, I told everybody on the putting green. And I gone, "You owe me, Tiger Woods." And he held his hands up. He says, "Billy Foster, I owe you big time." And I think that's why I got the job for the President's Cup, not because I'm a good caddy.
No, exactly, because he was your thrall. So there we go. I'll never look at Tiger Woods in the same way. Or indeed Tom Kite. Tom Kite. Excellent. John, Ryder Cup memories. Any Tiger Woods stories like that?
I don't, funny enough, no.
The Ryder Cup does things to caddy, because we've seen it before with caddies on both sides getting so wrapped up in it as well, maybe particularly on the American side of things, but the caddy, do you get as involved and caught up in the atmosphere of it as the players?
It's a wonderful experience, but I'll be honest with you, I think it's a very difficult week. It's a bit like trying to put a thoroughbred horse into a little box. They don't like going in there, and these guys, when they're 12 against 12 and everyone's watching, they're as twitchy as you'll ever see them. You've got to be perfect, and if you're not, it's all your fault. They tend to, or from my experience, I found that Luke would go quieter and quieter as the pressure built, which meant...
Is that possible with Luke? I don't know.
I know, he's Luke Donald.
He's just communicating through mime by the end of the week.
But in the end, you just had to make every decision for him.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly an enjoyable decision to make a lot of the time. We touched on best clubs. I remember at Celtic Manor playing against Jim Furyk in the singles, and was it 16 the par 3 or 17? 17, and the pin's in the middle of the green, middle tier, and he just stood at the back of the tee, goes, "What is it?" And I said, "Right, well, these are the numbers." I rattled out the number. He said, "I don't care about that, what club is it?" I said, "Well, it's a 4-iron, Luke." And he said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." Of course, in the meantime, I wasn't exactly sure, you just sort of hoping you're sure. And then he said, "If you put me over this green, you and I are done." And I'm like,
no pressure.
Okay then. Well, I'm still sure it's a 4-iron, so have at it, mate. And I wandered to the edge of the tee and thought, wow, I could be done in a minute, because I know that this 4-iron's on the edge. It's, it could go long. And he hit it to about a foot. And I walked over. I was expecting him to come over and say, "Good job there." And he just walked off the tee, getting all the applause. I stood there going, "Oh, well done, Luke. Yeah, shot, mate."
So you buried that away, and you thought, right, no, I'm going to
get you back.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, it's fascinating to hear about the Ryder Cup and those insights in terms of, because again we just don't see it. We see little whispers and wonder what you're suggesting to the players.
Medina was incredible too, wasn't it?
Well, I was lying on the sofa at home with a broken leg, so yeah, I missed that one.
Incredible on TV, I heard that.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it.
That was actually quite a
tricky
time for you, because you injured your was that playing
Snapped my
football?
ACL, yeah.
So
That's
because
another story.
Well, there's another story, but hey, it's a story for now, because
It's a story.
At that time, you had to be let go by, or Lee took another caddy on, and then but the relationship ended, and then you went back. It was like a sort of separation in a marriage, as I think you put it, and then you got back together.
It's like being married to somebody, he left me for another woman, didn't he? But came back. True love came back in the end.
But that's the point again about caddying, because it can be quite a brutal existence out there.
Yeah, it is. That's the exact word. It's brutal.
Would you recommend it to? And again, we're talking to you two who are very successful caddies, but would you recommend it to someone to get into caddying now? Because there's a lot of it's very different to, again, going back to the 80s when you're sleeping in bushes and camper vans, but it's still very hard out there to make a successful living.
Yeah, it's changed massively out here, and you can make a good living as a caddy these days, but it is a tough existence, isn't it, John? And
it's the hardest thing to get into now, though.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, like Billy said, you used to just turn up at an event, stand at the car park, wait for someone, and they'd go, "What you doing?" "Yeah, jump on the bag." Whereas now, I mean, to work for a top-class player, actually, I wouldn't know how to advise someone to get.
No. Yeah, I mean, you literally caddy for somebody, miss the cut, and then get another job with somebody else for the weekend, regularly in the 80s. You know, it was.
I wouldn't imagine you'd trade it for any other.
I won't trade it for anything. It's been a fantastic life. We've been very lucky people. You know, me and John have both been quite successful with, or lucky, you know, with certain players we've caddied for, and I won't swap it for the world. It's been a fantastic experience.
What do you still hope to achieve in the game? Billy's saying a nice quiet retirement or something like that, or other things to do.
Your goal is, I mean, my goal is, you know, you've been very successful in caddy for guys, won 40 odd tournaments and more Ryder Cups, but that elusive major's not there, and you'd love to sneak one before you hang your boots up. But
we mentioned Thomas Bjorn at St George's, but I suppose the near miss, and Lee Westwood had a string of very, very close.
He had a lot. Turnberry were the one that got away, really. You know, he bogeyed 15, 16, birdied 17 and bogeyed. He three-putted the last to miss out by a shot, which was, you know, that was heartbreaking, really, because he played fantastic golf that week. That would be the one. You know, obviously a couple of Masters that got away with Mickelson's incredible shot out of the trees, and, you know, when Danny won, Lee arguably should have, you thought he was going to step up to the plate and win that one, but it got away again. But, you know, he's had more, well, I think 9 or 10 top 3 finishes in majors. He's the most by 3 or 4 that hasn't actually won one, so he's still up. He might be able to kick one over the line, but as every year goes past, it gets more and more difficult because these kids are coming through thick and fast and all bombing it 340 yards. So it's very, very difficult.
And I'm sure it would annoy you when you see, because you've been there at the sort of sharp end of things with someone like Lee, when people say, "Oh yeah, you know, he can't quite cross the line in the majors, or he can't deliver under pressure," because it was never really down to pressure with.
No, it's down to me. I'm just a jinx.
Exactly. I should have. Yes, but in terms of you, John, thinking about going forward, I mean, what would you like to achieve in the game?
My close friends, Gareth Lord and Mark Fulcher, working for Stenson, and Justin Rose, they're the people I spend most of my time with, and Scott Vale, who used to work for Brandt Snedeker, and we sort of joust amongst ourselves about our careers, and both Stenson and Rose having won a major and I haven't, I remind them that they've never caddied for a number 1 in the world, or necessarily, you know, so we have the battle of who can have the full hand, the full deck, which we call the FedEx Cup, having a major and being number 1 in the world. If you can have them 3 cards, you've had a pretty good career. And none of us have got the full hand yet. So, you know, for me, I look at the FedEx Cups that have got away, and there's been 3 of them. Majors, I genuinely thought Luke was going to win at Merion. I thought that the course and where he was at with his game was about perfect. And I was in the group with Rose and Mark Fulcher when Justin did win. So yeah, they're the things that drive me personally.
Is there still a camaraderie between the caddies? I think I know the answer to this, but and if there is, who are the caddies? You mentioned some of the names there, but who are the caddies that you would hang around with and sort of travel with? And do you travel together and pool your resources, or has that changed as well?
It's a mixed bag of tricks with me. You know, sometimes I travel a lot on my own, and, you know, other times it'll be Teddy Mundy that caddies for Poulter, Dominic that caddies for Torbjorn Olsen, Bobley sometimes, who's
caddy for everybody.
Mad as a box of frogs, like, you know. But there's all sorts of weird and wonderful characters out here, and, you know, it's a great camaraderie out here, you know, and you've got to have a bit of a thick skin out here because the lads will crucify you if you make a mistake, you know. Think about you upsetting your boss because you've made a mistake. It's the month's abuse you're going to get off the caddies for, you know, if you play a wrong ball or something stupid like that. It's the dog's abuse that you get is pretty cruel, like, but it's all in good jest.
And do you get treated well? We talked about how the improvements in the caddy's life and a different world to what it used to be, but do you get treated well enough as professional people and quite highly paid people at times? Has that improved enough?
In my opinion, yeah, but I've come from,
The bush.
I've gone from council house to penthouse, like, so to me, we get treated really, really well.
Yeah, and I think that the US is still a little bit behind, if you ask me. I see the European
Yeah, I
tour,
agree with
they try to embrace us more as part of the game, whereas the US still seems to want to have segregation in it. We're not allowed in clubhouses or locker rooms, and
I understand that's down to the players. The players don't want us in the locker rooms. That's what I keep hearing, but whether there's any truth in that, I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, that might be down to about 3 or 4 that have decided it, and they're on the committee, and that's it.
Yeah, we'll ask them. Right, final questions to you. I want to ask, and again, you've mentioned a couple of shots, but the best shot you've seen any of your players hit, you can have a think about that, John. We'll come to Billy.
Well, it's obvious. I mean, it's
Seve's
Seve's shot in Switzerland was beggars belief. To have the imagination.
What year was this again?
1993, so it's 25th anniversary this year. It's incredible, isn't it?
So take us through it.
Well, he was 5 shots off the lead with 6 holes to play, and he birdied 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17 to tie for the lead, and then slashed a 3-wood 60 yards right off the last tee behind an 8-foot wall. His ball was probably 7 foot from the wall. He had to get it up over an 8-foot wall and hitting towards 10 o'clock, but over the top of the wall it was just full of fir trees, no shot. And to have the imagination to even envisage playing a shot is one thing. And these players these days will just chip it out and chip it on, like, and I begged him at least 3 times, just chip it out, wedge it on, you can still make par and win the tournament. No, why I listen to you, why you put doubt in my mind, you son of my go get the yardage. So I've gone, I promise you, I went to the edge of the fairway, didn't even get a yardage, just looked at the flag and went, 140 will do. So I've come back and said 140. Okay, give me the pitching wedge. I'm like, look, I know you're Seve Ballesteros, but you're not effing Paul Daniels. Just chip it out, will you? Why I listen to you? Why you put doubt in my mind, you son of my You carry the bag, go on, get away. And I'm like, tripping over my bottom lip, like, walking away, and I'm stood 80 yards away. And he hits this shot, and the dust flies. I'm expecting it to hit the wall, come back and plug between his eyes and kill him, like. And more importantly, I'm going to lose my percentage money. But anyway, the ball, dust everywhere, I don't hit the trees, and it appears over this wall, and as it's 100 foot in the air, sailing over these 4 80-foot pine trees. In the air, I'm thinking, this is the best shot that's ever been hit. And to have the imagination, never mind pull it off. And it landed a yard short of the green. Just goes to show if I give him the right yardage, he might have knocked it on. But,
yeah, exactly. Shouldn't have been vague about the 140.
Yeah, and then he chips it in for birdie, so I had to get down on my hands and knees and bow to him, calling him godlike, but that was an incredible golf shot.
So now, John, you've got Duffy or Anders or Luke or Paul to try and follow that. Can you think of any one particular shot that...
Yeah, I would say Medina, 17.
Oh, I thought it was going to be something from Duffy. Oh.
He had a number of good shots. But yeah, the Medina shot, 17, with Luke playing against Tiger in the foursomes, and Tiger had hit it to about 7 feet just behind the flag. The wind was straight off the right. Caddy's nightmare over water. Couldn't tell whether it was helping or hurting. Luke was in mute zone, and I'm looking there thinking, if we Sergio. So it's like 7 iron, 6 iron, 8 iron, 7 iron, going through all the emotions of those 3 clubs, and eventually went back and said, look, it's 7 iron, just aim just a bit right of the flag and hit a draw, it'll be perfect. And he stood up and hit one of the most beautiful 7 irons you'll ever see to about a foot. And it was, it was an amazing shot. Everyone was on edge, and the crowd just went absolutely crazy. And just to step one inside Tiger's there was really special.
Yeah. Makes up for not getting a percentage that week, so that's
exactly.
That's the thing. Listen, thank you for talking to us, gentlemen. It has been fascinating, and again, just getting an insight into, because sometimes the players will get some stories, but they never tell the truth. So we get the truth from the caddies. So thank you very much indeed to John McLaren and Billy Foster. John, we wish you many happy years on tour, and Billy, whatever you.
Happy retirement.
Happy retirement.
Good luck with that, Billy. Cheers, mate.
We'll give you a carriage clock. You've been listening to the Life on Tour podcast with John McLaren and Billy Foster.